Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Shallow End. You are listening to a special limited series called The Chase. Over 2 weeks, you're going to hear from collectors who successfully chase down an elusive card, player run, or set chase. I'm your host, Dave Schwartz, Iowa Dave Sports Cards on IG. Thanks for listening. Today's guest is Chris, perhaps better known on IG as Venezuelan League Stickers. You might have already guessed from his handle that he's a collector of vintage Venezuelan cards, and you'd be right. But what you might not know is just how difficult it can be to chase down some of those cards, especially depending on the card and the set. The card you're going to hear about today is one of the most desired within the circle of Venezuelan collectors. And in this episode, you're not just going to learn about Chris's conviction. You might also learn a whole new definition of what it means to be a collector. Very pleased now and excited to welcome in Chris, who is Venezuelan League Stickers on Instagram. Chris, thank you for being here. I'm excited for our chat today. What was your chase?
Thanks so much for having me, Dave. So my chase was the 1967 Topps Venezuelan, the Roberto Clemente base card from that set.
Great. So before we get into the chase itself, for those who maybe aren't so familiar with that set and that genre of baseball card, just give us a little bit of background on Venezuelan League cards and your interest in them.
Sure. So Topps was producing, manufacturing, and distributing baseball cards in Venezuela. They saw it as a burgeoning market for baseball fans. They did this from 1959 to 1968, roughly in like a skip year type of release. So there's 59, 60, 62, 64, 66, 67, and 68. For most years, those sets roughly mirror the U.S. based issues. They're usually like partial sets, but for the most part, they mirror the numbering. The cards look very similar. For a lot of years, there's some slight differences between the two, between the Venezuelan and the U.S. issue cards. 1967 is a little bit different. 1967 almost certainly was not actually authorized by Topps. It was probably issued by a company called Sport Grafico in Venezuela. Sport Grafico was like the Venezuelan version of like Sports Illustrated. It was like a sports magazine down there. So 67 is very, very different. 67 came in 3 series. There was the Major League, current stars. So just MLB players. There was a series of Venezuelan Winter League players, and then there was a series of retired stars. Those are the now kind of famous like all blue cards with the red Retriado at the bottom. Those have really kind of blown up in the last few years. Yeah, so it was a 3 series set, very, very different from all the other years of Topps Venezuelan cards. What got me into Topps Venezuelan cards in the first place is I much like a lot of other collectors, started collecting when I was like 8 or 9 or 10 years old. So back in the early 90s, got into it, got really into it. In 92, Fleer Ultra started doing, quote unquote rare insert cards. So 92, 93, 94 Fleer Ultra, I became like obsessed with the insert cards and the pack odds and like the cards that looked aesthetically different and cool. Got away from collecting baseball cards like around the time that I graduated high school, and then got back into it in late 2018. I don't even remember why, honestly, but I think it was because Shohei Ohtani was big in the league. That was his rookie year, and I was hearing about like there's a Japanese Babe Ruth in the league, so I was like, that's kind of cool. And then just got back into baseball cards. So in early 2019, I was searching around eBay and came across some Venezuelan Topps cards. I had heard of Topps Venezuelan cards just in passing, but didn't, I didn't know anything about them. And I was immediately hooked as soon as I started researching them and kind of digging into them more. Going back to when I collected as a kid, so I was really into insert cards and modern cards, but I can also remember going to shows and seeing, some of the iconic vintage cards, post-war cards. So like the Mickey Mantles, the Willie Mays cards, the Hank Aaron rookie cards. Those cards just, to me, were on just like a whole nother level. Like, like I had my like Fleer Ultra packs, and I was kind of like down here. Vintage cards in my head were like on a whole nother tier above me. I can remember I got a 1970, I think it was 73 Raleigh Fingers card. It was all creased up. It was not in great condition, but I thought I was like the king of the world because I had a vintage card of a guy like I had heard of. So I thought I was rich, and like I thought like that, that I just made it. So for me, like I like the nostalgia stuff from when I was a kid was post-war vintage of guys like Mantle, Mays, Koufax, Clemente, and also ultra modern insert cards that were kind of shiny and somewhat rare.
So you're back into cards and you're scratching that itch of vintage, specifically post-war vintage. So take us now to the interest or the pivot to the Venezuelan cards. You mentioned you kind of just came across them, but you could go a lot of different ways. So what was it about these cards that really captured your interest?
Yeah, so the Topps Venezuelan cards really scratched both of the itches for me. One being post-war vintage, and like the titans of the 50s and 60s, the players, and also the itch of hard to find cards, rare cards. That kind of ties back into like chasing after insert cards from the 90s. So they really are the intersection of post-war vintage and also like however you want to describe it, rare, scarce, super short print, those types of things. That's what really drew me to them, is the chase. Because if you think about like a 1968 Topps US issue Mickey Mantle card, you can go on eBay and find, I don't know how many listings there are. There's probably dozens, maybe 100 copies on eBay. Whereas the Venezuelan version, there's, I think, fewer than 30 graded across PSA and SGC for that card. Much, much harder to find. Yeah, that's what really drew me to them, and that's what's really like kept my interest in them.
I really love this idea and just want to dig a little bit deeper into it. So, if somebody is pre-war, right? I guess your kind of variations can be, for example, the different backs on the T206s, right? There's different companies that had it. And of course, in the ultra modern card, it's all about the parallels and variations. But in the post-war, from say like late 40s to the late 80s, it's just the card. But then you manage to find this intersection of the Venn diagram in which it is this 1960s-ish era of cards, which you love, as you call them, like the titans of baseball, Mantle, Mays, those types of Koufax, whoever. But at the same time, they're just a little bit different. Is that right? They're just something about them that makes them a little bit more enticing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, that's what really has like kept my interest in them. I also collect a lot of modern cards, and I mostly go after more rare modern cards. So I still have that soft place in my heart for like shiny cards, but like post-war vintage still elicits like the same, I like mystique and awe in me that it did when I was 10 years old, going to shows, seeing cards that that I could never imagine even owning. And I did go through a phase after getting back in the hobby of like going through and buying some of the US issue post-war cards that I always wanted but I could never own, like the 56 Mantle. But those cards have kind of come and gone for me. I still love them, but the Venezuelan cards have really since 2019 have been my number one PC focus. So
amazing. So let's get now to the Clemente, right?
sure.
Not exactly an easy card to grab, right? This is not one that there aren't 500 different tables at the National that are all selling a 67 Venezuelan Clemente, I imagine, right?
No, there's not.
Right. So at what point did you mentioned you got back, you discovered and found an interest in Venezuelan cards in 19. At what point did you decide to set your sights on a Clemente?
So, I mean, I've wanted one since really discovering Venezuelan cards and really like going down the rabbit hole. Like within the Venezuelan sets, like you always hear people say like, "Oh my gosh, Topps Venezuelan cards, they're all so rare." The truth is, most of them are not really that rare, especially like 66 and 64. Those sets, they're pretty well available. Most of the cards from those sets. So within the Topps Venezuelan world, there are certain Hall of Famer cards that are especially short printed, and a lot of those come from the 67 set. Clemente, Bob Gibson, and Hank Aaron are three examples. The Clemente, there's 20 total graded across PSA and SGC. The Bob Gibson and the Aaron, I think, are sub 10 each graded copies. Like I became extremely interested in trying to go after the harder to find Venezuelan cards within the Venezuelan like world. So
describe what that process would be like. Is I'm sure it's not just, I shouldn't say I'm sure, but I'm guessing it's not just enough to set up an eBay search and then cross your fingers.
Well,
so what is the community like, and how did you start trying to look for it?
So there's a lot of guys that like established connections with dealers down in Venezuela. I've never been good at that. I've done a few direct deals over the years with guys in Venezuela. I've never been. I don't know. Like I don't have the gift of gab, the the networking ability to like really set that up. I mean, some guys do, and that's amazing, but I kind of don't. So there's a really active Facebook group for Topps Venezuelan cards. A lot of great guys in there. That's one go-to spot for trying to source a card. A lot of it is just setting up eBay searches, honestly.
Yeah, sure.
Because I mean, these cards are rare, but I mean, 20 graded copies. Like you would think that there would always be one available if there's 20. But one interesting thing about the Clemente, the 67 Clemente, that I wanted to point out is I've looked at every public sale in the last 5 years. I believe every single one of those is a brand new to the hobby copy. So even if there's 20 graded examples, I don't think any of them have sold in the last 5 years. Zero. Every single copy that has sold in the last 5 years is a copy that I think came from Venezuela, was graded, and brought to market essentially.
And then whoever gets it then just holds it, right? Because they're so precious.
Yeah, that's a testament to just how like what the demand for the 67 Clemente is like, right? I mean, it's considered a Venezuelan grail. For Venezuelan collectors. It's also considered a super tough card for just Clemente collectors. So yeah, but for me personally, like how I got my copy, I mean, I can kind of walk you through that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. And as we get to it, there's also the added element of Clemente was hot during COVID, right? Like it was 19 is when you found Venezuelan cards, and then when I talk to more plugged in vintage dealers or vintage sellers and vintage hobbyists than myself, Clemente just took off. So in addition to having a hard card to find, there's a growing Venezuelan collector population, and happens to be the guy who is among the hottest names in vintage going on top of it. So you have all these three things triangulating to make it hard. So yes. Tell us about how you found yours.
Sure. Yeah. So there were a couple of low grade copies that are in authentic slabs that sold on eBay in 2020. They went for pretty good prices, but at the time, like I wasn't willing to spend over $1,000 for a baseball card in 2020.
Yeah.
At the time, the 67 Koufax was the number one Venezuelan card on my list. I landed that in mid 2020. So once I got that, the 67 Clemente, basically became, like number 1, 2, or 3 on my list of, want list cards. So between 2021 and 2024, there were a handful that sold publicly. 2021, a PSA Authentic sold in Memory Lane for a great price. I don't think I had Memory Lane on my radar at that point. And then there were 2 or 3 that were listed on eBay as buy it nows at really reasonable prices that would sell like immediately. So like I would wake up the next day to a saved search alert email saying, hey, there's a new, listing. And I would go to it and I would be looking at a sold listing. It was extremely frustrating. That happened, 2 or 3 times over the course of maybe 2 years or so. So then if we fast forward to October 2023, it happened again. A PSA 1 was listed at a buy it now price that was, pretty reasonable, sold quickly. I missed it. The seller is one of the largest dealers of Venezuelan cards on eBay. So this wasn't like a one-off, card that was sold by some unknown seller. So, and it was in a new PSA slab. So I went to the PSA website and opened up this cert lookup page and started entering, the certs that came before the PSA 1. And it was a bunch of other Venezuelan cards. So I was like, okay. And then I jumped ahead to the cert after the PSA 1, and a beautiful PSA 2 67 Clemente came up on my screen. And I was like, oh crap. Okay. So, so I got really excited about that. I immediately reached out to the seller and was like, hey, I did some digging. Like I didn't want to sound creepy, but I was like, I did some digging. I know you own this card. Are you willing to move it? He said he wanted to keep it for now. So I reached back out a month later in November, and this time they asked what price I had in mind. So I threw out a very strong offer, and they said that they were going to hold it until the next year. So then in late January, the PSA 2 got listed on eBay for a very high price with OBO on it. I screwed around and submitted an offer $500 under what I told the guy via Messenger that I would pay, like 2 months earlier. The seller immediately called me out and was like, hey, your offer's lower than what you said you'd pay in November. I already have offers matching what you offered. I'll pass. I was like, crap. Okay. I was like, all right. So I went ahead and submitted an official offer of what I said I would pay to him back in November. The seller came back and said, hey, I want to let it sit a little bit and get more offers. I'm like sweating at this point. So a whole month goes by and I'm checking the card every day to see if it's sold. And, I'm wanting to give the seller space because at this point, I've already messaged him, I've sent him 4 or 5 messages about this card. So he knows I want it. And then in late February, the seller finally reached back out to say that they, that he'd like to, that he would like to accept my last offer. So I got it for the offer I threw out in November.
Very good. And how did that feel to know you're going to finally be getting that card?
That's the best hobby feeling in the whole world. To me, when you finally secure a card that you've wanted for years, and that has eluded you, that's hard to find. That's even better. Well, it's about on par with getting it in the mail finally. But to me, just securing it and knowing that you did it is just incredible. So yeah, I was on cloud 9. I was dancing around the house. My wife was making fun of me for it, and it's I don't care. I don't have a care in the world right now. I just landed a card I've been looking for years.
And how does it look in hand?
Oh, it's fantastic. I mean, it's got some staining on it, but the back's pretty clean, which is, kind of unusual for the 67 set. Most of the backs are kind of torn up. I'll try to hold it up here. But that's the card.
And for those of you who are listening, you can check out my Instagram page at Iowa Dave Sports Cards for a link to this podcast that you're already listening to, but also you'll see an image of it as well. All right. I need to ask just two more questions. One of them is, what do you think it is? And I was not planning on asking you this, so I'm putting you on the spot a little bit. But what do you think it is about collectors? Because I've talked to others who are doing this chase series as well, who are in the same spot, and I've done it, where you're looking for a card and it could be months or years, and it finally comes up, and we still put an offer in on it. It's sitting there, and you did the same thing. What do you think it is about just collectors in general that even when, no matter how long we've been waiting, we have that itch to just make an offer and not just grab the card and finally just have it?
So so like going back to my situation in particular, if he had listed it at the price that I offered in November, I would have smashed the bin immediately without thinking about it. I had the money, so I mean, it wasn't like like a money issue, but like he listed it, maybe 40% above that. I think it was around 40% higher than what I had offered, which I mean, at the like at the time was that's a high price for that card. So I think he knew that it wasn't going to get like scooped up via bin. If you're asking me like why did I offer 500 lower than
I'm curious.
Like what I quoted him in November, I don't know. I think because like back in November, like I was trying to entice him to even make the card available at all. So I went in like very strong on the offer in November. I thought the offer that I sent him when he first listed it on eBay was more in line with probably like the true market value. It was more in line with what I thought the card would do at auction if he were to just run it at auction. I mean, I thought that that the offer that I sent him in January was still a fair price. I mean, I wasn't trying to lowball him. But yeah, it was kind of funny when he immediately recognized me and was like, "What the hell, man? This is lower than what you offered." And I was like, "Crap! Like, did I just like ruin this like relationship? What have I done here?" Yeah, I was immediately like kicking myself, but I mean, it all worked out. But that's why I did that, because in November, I was trying to make it worth his while to even listen to me, because he didn't have that publicly available. He didn't have it listed anywhere.
So as we wind down now, I guess my last question would be, is you've got the Koufax, you've got the Clemente. What is next in terms of your Venezuelan search? Is it the Gibson or the Aaron, or is it what else? What's next?
So I've got the 67 Aaron.
Oh wow.
That's another card that I absolutely love. The 67 Gibson I do not have. That is in my top 2 or 3 right now. I want that card really badly. A raw copy came up on eBay. I think Greg Morris auctioned it. And I was like, I'm going to win this card. And I put in a snipe that was, I thought, double what it would probably do. And I lost. It's tough. And and if I could go back in time, I would have gone even higher on it.
Well, now you know.
Yeah.
Now you know what it's going to take.
I know. Yeah. So the 67 Gibson's high up there. The Nolan Ryan rookie is the top Venezuelan grail, like ultimate grail card. By far the most expensive, top Venezuelan card. That's up there. Probably will never own one. It's probably gotten away from me at this point. I remember passing on them when they were $3,000, $4,000 in 2020, 2021 ish. I think 2021 they were 5 or 6 already, and I was, at that point I was like, I'm not paying $6,000 for that card. Now they're doing over 10. It's hard to find one less than 10. So if I can find one that's like been put through the washing machine, and like maybe sell a whole bunch of stuff, maybe I can go for it. But I'll probably never own it. But that's high up there.
Well, Chris, congratulations on the Clemente. That's a fantastic story about a really cool set of cards. If anybody out there is listening and has a Nolan Ryan Venezuelan rookie that has gone through the washing machine, reach out to Chris, who's at Venezuelan League Stickers on Instagram. Chris, thank you for sharing your story.
Thanks a bunch, Dave. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.